Well, good afternoon. I'm so happy to be back here. Let me apologize to those of you who, for the last 22 years, remember that I would never leave this room. However, on the way to this 2010 year, I was elected chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And as you know, it's the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation that puts on the annual legislative conference. This is our 40th year, over 12,000 participants, and therefore my responsibilities are a little bit more than they've been in the past. However, I'm so fortunate to have outstanding staff that can take care of things, but also so many people who have stepped in over the years, as Reed did today, and Bernadette Palo did several years ago, and others who just stepped up to the plate. Let me say that it's very inspiring that so many of you have continued to have a strong interest in Africa. When we began our series 22 years ago, we had a little room back in a corner somewhere near a closet, and we couldn't fill that up. But we've seen the growth of the interest in Africa grow, and as the growth of Africa was here, we've seen that transform in growth and development with our partners in Africa. As you know, we've had many, many leaders, but none that I have more respect for than the one I'm getting prepared to introduce today. It's my pleasure to introduce General Salva Kiir, who was the first Vice President of the Republic of Sudan and President of the government of South Sudan. He also serves as Commander-in-Chief of the Sudanese People's Liberation Army, the SPLA. And in that capacity as a liberator, I met him maybe 15 years ago as he had captured some tanks and weapons from the government of Sudan, and we met on a dusty road down in South Sudan. And I still have those pictures of that. But now he's taken over the leadership of South Sudan. General Salva Kiir attended Sudan Military College in infantry training and graduated as a second lieutenant in Sudanese Armed Forces. And as an outstanding and leading graduate in military and academic performances, he ascended to the rank of captain in Sudan's military intelligence. General Salva Kiir joined the first South Sudanese rebellion army in 1967 at the age of 17. He's been fighting for the liberation of his country for many, many years. He participated in the early formation of the SPLA with his comrade, Dr. John Garang. Lieutenant Carbino Bol and Colonel William Bani in the Sudanese armies back in the early 1980s, where they led the struggle forward year in and year out, underfunded, under-resourced, but they took the battle to protect their land and take the war even further north. After the split of the SPLM in 1991, General Salva Kiir remained with Dr. John Garang as second in command of the SPLA to the late Dr. John Garang. He was elected unanimously by the SPLM at their first national convention in 1994 as deputy chairman of the SPLM. After the death of the late Dr. John Garang in 2005, he was unanimously elected by the SPLM leadership as the new chairman of the SPLM. General Salva Kiir is also chairman of the SPLM's National Liberation Council. We have had, and I have had the privilege to travel to South Sudan on a number of occasions with my staff, Noel Hussein and Ted Danye and others. And we have always been welcomed when Dr. John Garang was their leader, meetings with all of their ministerial people, meetings and dinners with President John Garang, the late Dr. Garang. And as President Salva Kiir has taken over the leadership, we find the same kind of attention given. We were there at the first election of President Salva Kiir several, 4, 5, 6 months ago in Juba. And I had the opportunity as a political person, and even started out as the lowest level called a district leader, I had the opportunity to go to his district where he cast his first vote as the new South Sudanese elections that selected their leadership of the South. Well, let me say that he has not been treated as well in the United States of America as we've been treated as we travel there. President Salva Kiir has never met with any high officials of the current administration. When former Dr. Garang was here and leader of SPLM, SPLA, he had 4 or 5 meetings with the president, the then president himself. Many meetings with Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, meetings with Secretary Colin Powell, welcome to the White House, as I mentioned, by the president at least 4 times. But we've been unable, as this trip here today, to meet with even low-level people of our State Department. You know, the truth is the light, and I'll tell the truth, whether people like it or not, and make it clear. As it will be reported back, say that's exactly what Congressman Donald Payne said, because it's the truth. And so, as we move into trying times for the South, there's an election that is supposed to be held, and we will determine that it will be held on January the 10th of 2011, where the people of South Sudan will have an opportunity to determine whether they want to remain a part of Sudan or whether they want to secede and have their own government and own country. This is a part of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement signed a number of years ago, which Dr. Garang gave his life in a suspicious plane crash. We will not allow the clock to be turned back. We give our undivided attention and support. I do. And we've had meetings that will be held in the Congress with President Salva Kiir. People at the United Nations in New York will be meeting with him, but no one from the administration will be meeting with him. But he's our choice. He's the people's choice. He's our friend, President Salva Kiir.
Thank you very much for your reception. And I am very much privileged to stand before you today. I'm not complaining, as he mentioned before, that I have not met any senior officials of the administration. That is not our problem. But it is good that I'm here to address you in your annual Congress. So my brothers and sisters, members of the American Congressional Caucus, all the invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is it taking attention? Well, it gives me the pleasure to be here today. I would like to thank Congressman Donald Payne, is my dear brother and a friend, for inviting me to speak today in this auspicious forum. This gives me the opportunity to pay tribute to his extraordinary leadership, solidarity, and courage on the issue of Sudan. At the time of great difficulty and suffering for Sudan, and the South in particular, you and your colleagues in the Congress, such as Frank Wolf, Mr. Smith, Kapawna, Jackson Lee, Franks, Senators Brownback, Kerry, Wicker, Feingold, Dodd, and among others, stood with us and worked for peace in my country. I vividly recall Donald Payne's visit to Niamey in 1993. At a time of great strife for us, I also take this opportunity to remember one of the great friends of our movement, whom we sadly lost prematurely in the tragic plane crash, Congressman Mick Leland. Why do I have to recall that visit to Niamey? I recall it because it helped produce a congressional resolution of support for the SPLM call for the right of the people of Southern Sudan to self-determination, a commitment that lies at the heart of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, the CPA, that finally brought peace to our country in 2005. A right that will be exercised at last in a crucial and historic referendum in January 2011. Congressman, I am convinced that your efforts have saved many lives in my country. I honor you today, and I thank you very much. I would also like to recognize Congressional Black Caucus Chairperson Barbara Lee, and thank her for her work on Sudan. I remember, Barbara, you also visited Juba, and I regard you all as good friends of the Sudanese people. I must also recognize my great sister, Dr. Susan Rice, for her contribution for peace in our country. I also want to thank the American people and pay tribute to them for their steadfast support. Their pressure and concern was immensely important in securing peace. Their continued interest, like yours, will be more necessary than ever in the testing months ahead of us. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my predecessor and late hero, Dr. John Garang de Mabior, also addressed this House in September 2004, just a few months before the CPA was signed, which ended so many years of war in our country, Sudan. The CPA remains the vital foundation of peace today and will remain so in the months to come. I want today to welcome and express gratitude for the extraordinary leadership of the United States of America under many administrations that made the CPA happen and is still helping to ensure that peace is maintained. That leadership remains essential and will always be praised in the Sudanese history. In recent days, President Obama's administration has reiterated and reinforced American engagement for the crucial months that are to come. The administration has deployed extra staff and resources and recently released some very clear messages about what is necessary from the parties in Sudan. I very much welcome this engagement. It could not be more necessary now than any other time before. President Obama's commitment to attend next week's UN high-level meeting on Sudan is a very important signal of his own personal interest and commitment, and with it, American engagement. I am immensely grateful and look forward to continued contacts with him on a personal basis. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are left with over 100 days to reach the vital moment in the history of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, which is the referendum. This is an extraordinary moment in the history of Africa. We must be realistic and clear-sighted about what lies ahead of us. January's referendum will likely make clear the wish of the people of Southern Sudan for their own state in case of the choice of secession. Thus, U.S. government leadership and day-to-day involvement will be vital to make sure that the transition to a new state happens smoothly and peacefully. This will only happen if the international community, led by the United States, requires all the parties to stick to the commitments that they have already made. Southern Sudan has achieved much in the years since the CPA was signed. Despite our history of decades of war and destruction, we have a working democracy today in Sudan. We have a functioning government providing security and law and order. Business is beginning to flourish. But for our people to enjoy peace and prosperity in the years to come, we need your help, especially during these very difficult challenges of the months that are to come. Over the last 5 years, it has become clear that unity has not been made an option for our people. Our partners in the North showed very little interest or activity to make unity a realistic proposition. At the moment, all signs point to the fact that on January 9th, 2011, Southern Sudanese people will vote overwhelmingly for their own independence. Together we must prepare for this eventuality. While my own government is moving heaven and earth to ensure that the necessary referenda in Southern Sudan and Abyei should take place correctly and on time, there have been worrying signs of foot dragging from our partners in the north. Here is a clear task for the international community. It should be signaled clearly to the parties that no disruption or delay to this referenda can be tolerated. As we look forward to this historic event, it is important to recognize the limitations of the environment in which we are operating. Southern Sudan is not like Switzerland, because in Switzerland you can just move all around driving or doing what. It is not the case in Southern Sudan. So our geography and infrastructure may work against us. The measure of credibility of the vote should be clear and understood beforehand. We are working for a vote that represents fairly the views of our people. This should be the measure of the legitimacy for that process. It is not realistic to demand perfection, but it is in our interest that a free, fair, and transparent process is put in place. Critically important is that the referenda take place on time, as stipulated in the CPA. Delay or denial of the right of self-determination to the people of Southern Sudan and Abyei risks dangerous instability. There is, without question, a real risk of a return to violence on a massive scale if the referenda do not go ahead as scheduled. To us, the timing of the referenda is sacrosanct. The weight of our history, the depths of our people's suffering, and corresponding expectations, the promises of their leaders, both in the north and south, and the guarantees of the international community create no space for wavering on this commitment. Once a vote takes place, a different challenge will emerge. Here again, we will need the leadership of the United States and its allies and other grantors of the CPA to ensure a peaceful transition. It will be vital that the international community respect its stated commitment to accept the results and help the parties make the necessary arrangements for a new situation to emerge. As we prepare for the referendum, we have also begun negotiations on post-referendum issues. The government of Southern Sudan has approached these negotiations with seriousness and good intentions. We are genuinely willing to negotiate with our brothers in the north and are prepared to work in a spirit of partnership to create sustainable relations between Northern and Southern Sudan for the long term. It is in our interest to see that the North remains a viable state, just as it should be in the interests of the North to see Southern Sudan remain a viable one too. The North is our neighbor. It shares our history, and it hosts our brothers and sisters who are now residing in the north. Moreover, I have reiterated several times in my speeches in the past that even if Southern Sudan separates from the north, it will not shift to the Indian Ocean nor to the Atlantic coast. It will still remain in the same place. And so there should be no worry. We will strive to be good neighbors with the northern partners. From the very beginning, the SPLM has often negotiated for the South in good faith, basing itself on a comprehensive set of principles. Principles that we hope the North will ascribe to as well. These include that there should be good relations and peace between the people of Northern and Southern Sudan, that we develop trade and economic relations on the basis of equality and mutual benefit, that we negotiate post-referendum issues fairly and consistent with international law, that we work to preserve and enhance the livelihoods of all the Sudanese people, including those depending on traditional migrations across the north-south border. I want to particularly mention two issues of well-known concern. The first is oil, where everybody seems to think that in order for Southern Sudan to become an independent state, it must give up most of its oil reserves to the north. Now, where is the justice in such a situation? The North has been sharing with us the oil from the South, while having exclusive consumption of revenues from the northern oil produce. We don't get anything there. We should have also mutually agreed for a formula that is satisfactory to all, so that our populations should have equal economic benefits from the oil sector. That notwithstanding, we believe that there is a very real opportunity to demonstrate two states can work together cooperatively to bring economic prosperity to both of their nations in the event of secession. To this end, we have recently agreed with the National Congress Party, that is the governing party in Khartoum, a full independent audit of Sudanese petroleum sector, along with the publication of daily production figures in order to promote an atmosphere of trust and accountability between North and the South. The second, this particular and critical issue, is citizenship, so that the safety and rights of Southerners in the North and safety and rights of Northerners in the South, as well as for the peoples who have traditionally traveled through the border areas, are fully protected. I have committed my government to provide and guarantee adequate security for all Sudanese in a manner that respects the rule of law and the rights and freedoms of all individuals, no matter what their tribe, origin, religion, or ethnicity may be. We look for the same commitment from the North. Ladies and gentlemen, these negotiations will not succeed without the help of the international community, and in particular the leadership of the United States. We urgently need your country and the world to pay close attention to what is about to happen in Sudan. Your interest and your pressure for the parties to keep to their commitments will be essential to ensure a successful and, above all, a peaceful outcome. If now there is a pressing issue that can only be resolved with the U.S. With the U.S. attention, the issue of Abyei, where stability now and in the future depends on the implementation of the Permanent Court of Arbitration's decision, which Khartoum claims to have accepted, but where there has been continual delay. And I think everybody might have heard of the two parties going to Hague in 2009 on the issue of Abyei. And Abyei, according to the ruling of the PCA, was that it is a land of the Dinka Ngok people. And the boundaries were delimited where there should be no any claim of the Masiria people to that territory. They have their own area called the Masiria land. So there is this situation which needs attention. We do not want Abyei to become the potential epicenter for conflict to ignite between the South and the North again. As the midwife of the Abyei Protocol, the U.S. has a special role to see to it that there is no reverse to war because of the lack of implementation of the Abyei Protocol. I'm happy to mention to you that U.S. engagement has stepped up in the recent months, both in Juba and Khartoum. We very much welcome this and are very grateful for the efforts exerted by President Obama's administration to assist the parties to fulfill their obligations to the CPA. In this context, we welcome Ambassador Princeton Lyman's appointment to support the negotiation process. And we look forward to, and indeed are already enjoying working very closely with him. But when we consider these negotiations, I would like to stress that it should not be up to the South to put all of the compromises on the table at the onset. There are rising calls that the South must make accommodations and compromises if it expects the North to accept its independence. These two words are critical, that South must accommodate and must compromise if it wants the North to accept its independence. The terms accommodation, compromise, and praises such as buy your freedom are indeed troubling. These terms imply in some way that the South has not already made significant compromises and sacrifices. Anyone who knows the history of our country knows that nothing could be further from the truth of what we are now saying. We must also be realistic about the negotiations. It is unlikely that we will agree on all aspects of the post-referendum arrangements before January 9, 2011. We will work hard to get as far as possible. But the timing of the referendum is, as I said, sacrosanct. The vote must happen on time on January 9, 2011, and is not contingent on the conclusion of any post-referendum negotiations, including over the border as the CPA itself makes it very clear. It is without any condition. Whether we have done all these things or not, a referendum must take place. Elsewhere, referenda have successfully been held, even when borders were not completely resolved, including Eritrea and Ukraine. These are good examples. Southern Sudan should not be different from them. As I have already said, the CPA is very clear that the referenda must take place on the specified date. Ladies and gentlemen, the referendum will mark the beginning of a longer journey towards development and improved livelihoods for the people of Sudan. We want to responsibly and sustainably exploit our country's natural resources while also recognizing the need to diversify our country's economy, and in particular, to develop our agricultural sector. In the area of good governance, I acknowledge that we have much work to do. And let me reiterate my personal commitment, as well as the government's commitment, to establish transparent and accountable government where nepotism and corruption have no place, and guarantee that minority rights are protected and minority populations and interests are given voice and representation in all decision-making bodies of the Southern Sudan institutions. However, I would like to point out that after the referendum, our people will continue to need help. In particular, we will need the support of multilateral institutions such as the World Bank and arrangements to allow Southern Sudan to benefit from soft loans and grants in order to develop rapidly. American leadership is critical for this, and in shaping and supporting the UN presence in Southern Sudan, which will remain necessary in order to help with the remaining issues of post-referendum negotiations, such as border demarcation and the protection of civilians in the border areas. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by saying the following about the future of Sudan. One, my final appeal to you all is that future of Sudan is hanging in the balance. Therefore, it requires the attention of the region and the international community at large. Two, it is important to note that in ensuring full CPA implementation, that is, up to the timely conduct of the referenda in Southern Sudan and Abyei, is ensuring permanent peace in the region and the world. Three, U.S. government should maintain its focus on Sudan and work with the international community, particularly the Troika and the UN, to intervene if conflict rises again during and after the conduct of the referendum. Four, there is urgent need for the U.S. government, the Troika, IGAD countries, the African Union, and the international community to explicitly endorse the referendum and recognition of the choice of the people of Southern Sudan and Abyei. Five, the world should view Southern Sudan as a potential contributor to regional and international peace should it become an independent state after the referendum. Six, Southern Sudan will be a catalyst for the consolidation of democracy in the Sudan. 7, Southern Sudan is a potential market to the region because already the neighboring countries of Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and DR Congo are benefiting a great deal from Southern Sudan today as we speak. 8, I urge American investors and other investors worldwide to come and invest in Southern Sudan. In terms of agriculture, it will be the breadbasket of the region and if not of the world. In a nutshell, we have a roadmap of success in Sudan, which is the CPA. It is up to all of us to ensure that it is fully implemented. I'm grateful for your support and interest in my country and people. I urge you to maintain bipartisan support and ensure peace in this determinative phase of Sudan's history. In order to preserve and sustain the peace, we need you and the world needs America. We have a lot of work to do between now and January 9th, 2011. But with your help, I'm confident that we can achieve our common goals. That is economic development, the protection of human rights, but above all, sustainable and lasting peace for all of the people of Sudan. Once again, I thank you, Congressman, and your colleagues for having afforded me this golden moment to share with you about the fears and hopes of the future of our country. Thank you very much for your time, and may God bless you always. Thank you.
Let's have another round of applause for our leader, our President Salva Kiir, who has done such an outstanding job, and we're so privileged that he accepted our invitation to address our brain trust. Thank you. Our prayers and our support will be with you. We appreciate all of you who have come again. We will convene the 23rd Annual Legislative Caucus's Brain Trust on Africa next year in 2011 at the Annual Legislative Conference. I think it was a very stimulating and wonderful panelists, and I thank all the panelists, those who are still here. Let's give the panelists another round of applause, Reid and all the others. We certainly like to thank my team here, Elgene, Stephen, Chanel, Eugene, Noel, and Ted. Let's give them all a round of applause. The staff put it all together. So once again, we will be watching the January referendum, and we look forward perhaps to have our guest speaker next year, President Salva Kiir, President of South Sudan. Thank you very much.